Hi, I'm Ethan Alter, and I'll be engaging with Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, as we discuss his book Boldly Go for Under the Covers. I think one of the things I really like about it is the descriptions of your childhood. It must feel like a different planet when you think about what life was like then.
I vaguely remember the innocence of Montreal during the Second World War. I only became more conscious afterwards. I think that's an interesting aspect. When do we become more aware that other people exist other than ourselves? That's an interesting question. From our youth or childhood to old age, so many things happen and so many things don't happen. I don't think you acquire wisdom. I think a 5-year-old might have more wisdom in something they say innocently than a 95-year-old saying something that they think is wise and isn't, because I don't think you acquire wisdom through age. You acquire wisdom through intent, through experience, through study, or at least pondering your experience. Maybe that's what writing a book is all about. You ponder your experience and see what you can extract from that. And that's what this book is.
You write when you first told your parents you wanted to be an actor, they looked at you like, oh, okay, I guess you could do it.
No, they didn't look at me like, okay. They looked at me like, who are you? What, where did you come from?
Right.
We are, we don't, what's that, acting again?
Did they live long enough to see your success, though?
My father was around as Star Trek began. I think he died in 1968. So I was making a living. My mother lived until a few years ago, so she saw that success. But the success part wasn't, as long as I could make a living, and that varied as time went on, as more and more children arrived. What a living was, the definition of a living increased.
You do say in the book, too, that you were glad that none of your children or grandchildren have so far yet followed you into the acting game. Was that a life you didn't want for them?
No, it's so, success is so spare. It can happen because you're so talented or not, and it can happen because you're lightning struck at the moment you were under the tree there. In this entertainment industry, to a large degree, but not completely, experience doesn't matter. You could be a child out of acting school, and because you're at the right place at the right time, you become very popular, you make some money. And so that's why I didn't want my kids to be a part. And for the most part, they're not. For the most part, everybody's doing something else.
It is interesting because nepotism in Hollywood is certainly something people comment on. There's even a phrase for it, nepo babies, referring to the children of famous.
I suppose that's true. I haven't seen it. I mean, except for talented people. There's no reason to think that somebody whose parent is in the business shouldn't be in the business. They've been brought up with it all their lives, so they're doing something in entertainment. I don't know why that would be, only if they weren't talented, only if they didn't deserve to be where they were, would it be an offense to me.
You talk about your singing career in it as well, and it's so funny to see how you went from sort of being ridiculed for your singing to people really loving it now. Is that something that you've appreciated watching?
Well, I'm looking at that with great pride. The first album was called Transformed Man, and it was an interesting concept. But for one reason or another, it was mocked to some degree. Although Ben Folds, this wonderful musician, some years later picked it up and it resulted in this musical career, because Ben Folds and I made an album. The arc of that success is a part of what the book is about. I went from essentially failure, and it took a long time until recently, a couple of months ago. I entertained at the Kennedy Center, and I did songs that Robert Chernow and I wrote, ending with a song called So Fragile, So Blue, which delineated my experience up in space.
You make a point of saying in the book, you'll try anything once. That's your mantra. You'll try anything once. When you do experience something where you fail, what have you learned about that? Learn about failure and the idea of trying anything once, knowing you're not always going to succeed.
Failure is the death of something. We presume that what you're failing at is something you wanted to do or be or create. So it doesn't work. But the thing is, you can't know what works without knowing what doesn't work. The problem is, people don't want to accept failure as a learning step. And that's something we've got to do. We've got to teach.
You write very movingly of your friendship with Leonard Nimoy throughout your life, and how much you regret at the end of his life how you felt like you never reconciled. Is that one of, I don't know if you're someone who considers regrets, but is that a regret for you?
So regret for Leonard. Yes, I tried very hard to understand what was wrong, and I didn't understand and never resolved itself. But not so long ago, his daughter came up to me because I had written about, God, I wish I'd been able to connect with this dear friend of mine. And she said, she said, he loved you. And that gave me a great deal of peace.
Surprised to see you, Captain, though pleased.
I'm a little pleased myself.
You write a lot about spirituality in the book and your evolving notion of faith. I think people always forget that you were raised Jewish, that you were brought up in a Jewish household. How has your relationship to Judaism especially changed over the years?
I haven't been to temple in a long time, pray formally, but being Jewish is almost a cultural thing. Today is Yom Kippur, and I'm not doing what I did as a kid, which was not eating and not working, but I was aware.
You grew up at a time when anti-Semitism was still very prevalent in both America and I imagine Canada as well. Did you ever have any personal experiences with that as a child?
Yeah, I mean that was my background. My childhood was kids pounding on me because they didn't understand. They thought Jewish was, I don't know, witchcraft or something. Not realizing that the difference between all the religions is so minimal that there's essentially none. So I had to defend myself every day, many days. So I'd fight 1-2 guys at a time, a lot. So it inculcated certain thoughts and attitudes, which I discuss in the book and which I write about in songs as well.
It's not lost on me that the Star Trek film you directed, The Final Frontier, is the one that most really explicitly deals with faith and searching for God and things. Was that film part of your spiritual journey? Was that a story you felt you had to tell as well?
Yeah, I thought what a great plot it would be. This familiar group of people go in search of God, and what they find is the devil. And they have to wrestle with the devil, and they escape, and they go. So that everybody, wow, that's a great, oh my God, man. And then somebody at the studio said, well, whose God is it? I go, well, it's God. Well, no, but I mean, we'll alienate somebody, choose a God, and then we alienate everybody else. No, we can't do it. Can't do it. And then somebody else said, well, what about an alien who thinks he's God? Oh, I thought, well, I can save my premise if I do that. And then what I didn't realize is that I had weakened it.
So today you wish you had been able to do the original that he had.
Well, they wouldn't let me. So yeah. I had to come up with another one-line idea. And I think I only had one.
When you yourself pass on and you meet God or whatever deity exists next, what do you hope what do you think you'll say to her or him or them? What do you think you'll say?
I didn't know that. Or more succinctly, wow.
Excuse me, I'd just like to ask a question. What does God need with a starship?